Welcome to the Chaotic Good Story Club, and my name is Chris. We are continuing with our series on Warhammer 40,000 lore, and when I was originally thinking about this series, I was thinking about where to begin, because you might think, why not just start with the current position in the lore where we are right now? But then I kind of thought that then a lot of the current stuff doesn't make sense. A lot of it, to have its impact, relies on context. So I thought, okay, so where do we go back? Where do you start? What's a natural starting point for Warhammer 40k lore? And do I just start with the races, all cold, what everybody means, but then still it lacks context? However, Warhammer 40k has a sort of foundational myth, not necessarily for the whole universe, but for the main thrust of the game, and especially the human perspective. It goes back to the Horus Heresy, which is the series of books which has gone for like 70 volumes and been massively successful through Black Library that's really dug into it over the last decade and a bit. I thought, yeah, we'll start with the Horus Heresy. That's a great place to start. It's one of the first things I read about in the Realms of Chaos books. But then my little finicky ADHD brain went, you need a bit more background to that, because there is a story before that to give it context and to add it to where, modern day humans are. Let's take it from there. And, so Warhammer 40k is in the 41st millennium, give or take the year 40,000. The Horus Heresy is set around the year 30,000, and 31,000, no, 31st millennium, the year 30,000. But that leaves us with 28,000 years of human history that we should, maybe at least talk about. So this first episode is going to be how we get, as humans, from here to just before the Horus Heresy, or just before the unification of Terra, around the year 30,000, in the Warhammer 40k universe. So, how do we start? Well, we start from roughly here. 40k was originally conceived in the 1980s. So, the rise of corporations and liberal capitalism was very much the way of things. It was very political. A very political thing at the time was things like unions and social democracy were getting rolled back. But there was still a general consensus that things were going to progressively get more developed and better as time went on, even if there was ups and downs and slips and slides along the way. So, it is generally assumed in the 40k lore, I have to say, all the dates here, all the actual events are very hazy. If you think about it, we are currently something like 5,000 years from our furthest recorded history. People that we know what their names were and what they did goes back to about 2,500-3,000 BC. You're looking at people like, your actual Sargon of Akkad and Aenasir, the copper merchant, who sold bad copper. So we're talking about 5,000 years, about the furthest we can go back. So to 40k, our time is like 6 or 7 times further back than that. So you imagine what the fog of history does to all of this. So much is rumour and political rewriting and straight up lost knowledge. So all of this is quite broad strokes. Some of it is possibly straight up lies, but I believe there's a general arc that's pretty commonly accepted as the way things went. Although, the exact who did what, who started what caused things, is, as it almost always is in history, up for some debate. So we start off with human civilization kind of getting it together. We start off with, we're getting developed, we're getting technology, we're actually making the best of the earth. We're building these nice, shiny, green cities, and we're getting our technology going. Of course, one of the things that's going to drive technology is growing population, desire for extraterrestrial resources. So we're pushing out into the solar system using relatively current tech and relativistic speeds, and humanity starts to inch its way out into the universe using rockets and light sails and possibly at some point Project Orion style nuclear warheads yeeting starships into space. And of course you get a stack of that kind of things. Things are moving forward in a relatively 70s sci-fi kind of way. We're exploring the universe, we're colonizing things. As the lore develops, that's much more of an expanse kind of thing. So we move out into the universe, and this is very slow because we do not have faster than light travel, and it takes, even if you can get a ship up to light speed by, some of the means that could be done to do that, using light sails or gravity assists or ion engines, it's still going to take you a good 10 years or so to get to like Alpha Centauri and stuff. I'm pretty sure there's not much there. So it's going to take even long. So we're talking generation ships, colony ships to go much further. So the human sphere of influence out into the galaxy is going very, very slowly. But then, in about the year, I can't remember if it's about the year 5,000 or 15,000, 5,000 or 15,000, there's a few big discoveries. First of all, there is the confirmation that there is an alternate universe underneath our own that we can enter and leave. And we get the technological means to create gates or project gates that allow us to enter this other universe. This is called variously the warp, the immaterium, the ether, and so forth. And as we develop this, we develop the ability to sort of punch holes in reality and fly into this other universe. And also we develop shields known as Geller fields that protect us from that universe. And we develop mutants called navigators. I don't think it's ever quite nailed down in any of the lore whether navigators were a natural mutation or a genetic engineering one, but I would say it's such a focused mutation that I would say this has to involve a bit of genetic engineering. And basically navigators look mostly like normal human beings, but they have a third eye in the middle of their forehead, and this third eye allows them to see the tides of this other universe, of the immaterium, and steer ships through it. So we have ships that now get their fancy shields on and go into this other universe and use it to travel faster through the warp, through the immaterium, than you usually can through normal space, even though you're not going faster than light. If you think about it as if your city has a giant underwater river all over it, there's how far you can walk through the city, through the streets, stopping at lights, takes ages. But if you can drop into this underwater river and you know where the passages go, you can get across the city much faster if you know the currents, if you can see the currents. And this leads to the massive expansion of the human race across the galaxy. And we get pretty much everywhere pretty quickly. So that's colonies on moons under giant domes like this. That's giant colony ships landing and putting people down on planets. This leads to what is called in the lore variously, supposedly at the time, the Dark Age of technology. And in later years, I really should have put that on silent. In later years, the Dark Age of technology, because this technology is later lost. So that this is a great time. The humanity is expanding over the universe. We are beating up pretty much all the alien races and kicking them out. We are very much the rising star at this point. We are not the technological peak. There are older, harder civilizations out there. It's just they're not really paying attention to us. They don't really care at this point. They're old and self-indulgent, and they're the elves of the setting. We do have. We will get back to them. They are quite important. This is the Eldar, for anyone who's conversant in the names of 40k races. There's also a lot of other races about, such as orcs, pretty much your standard Tolkien orcs, but in space. A few major differences in the Warhammer 40k conception of orcs, but we will get back to that when it's more pertinent, when we go more in depth with them. Various other races like Zotes and Hrud and other things. So humanity spreads out across the universe. Our main worlds are become paradises of wealth, worlds that maybe aren't so central or necessarily so pretty, just become massive industrial wastelands. We are like strip mining planets on a planetary solar system scale, moving wealth around. We are doing pretty much what we want as and when we want. This is the golden age of technology. This is humanity's zenith as a species. We're great. And part of the things that helped us do this, there was some very, very hazy chat in the lore about how there were men of gold, great all-powerful men. I don't think this literally means men of gold, but that's maybe what the cognitae, the elite of the time sort of called and knew themselves as. And they were helped by men of stone, which I would say they would call maybe their artisan class, in this great endeavour, this great unified civilization. It's never quite said if it's a unified empire or anything like that, because I think we are maybe at a sort of, post-centralization kind of thing, where we're so powerful you don't really need a centralized state, just so long as everybody's talking and trading. We're so powerful and so great that kind of thing's not necessary. But it might have been an empire. It's not clear in the lore. And these men of gold and men of stone created men of iron, which was robots, artificial intelligence, who helped us do all the things, helped build the cities, maintain everything, pilot the ships, all the things that are difficult for humans. And it would be great if somebody who, lived longer, was stronger, could think faster, would do for us as a servant. And so, all shiny, all fantastic. Then you get towards, I think, the year sort of 20 to 25,000, and things start to change a bit. Psychic powers start to manifest throughout the human race. Now, there's always been, in this universe at least, there's always been some portion of the human race had psychic powers, but it was usually vanishingly small. Like the 0.00% of human beings had proper psychic powers. But around this time, there's an explosion of psychic potential, like the human race reached some sort of critical mass that allowed this genetic development to occur. Kind of your X gene from the X-Men, how it pops into use once the global population reaches a certain stage and there's a lot more mutants. Now, psychic powers are drawn from the other universe, the warp, like Materium, and they can be incredibly powerful. However, most people sort of develop their psychic powers as a teenager, and they don't know what's going on. And this is very, very bad for all of the reasons that you see in a lot of superhero movies, where somebody who develops massive power as a teenager and doesn't know what to do. This leads to bad things. They can go crazy. They can use their powers for self-aggrandizement and evil. Think of the movies like Chronicle or Brightburn for ideas of how horribly badly that can go. But even worse than that is that psychic powers are like beacons in the warp of the immaterium for the beings that live there. And psychers who are unstable, who can't control their psychic powers, are gateways for these beings and for the energy of the warp, which is in most ways bad for living creatures. You know, the entities that live in the immaterium basically want to eat your soul, and any influence they can have on human society is largely negative. And so you get these psychers, you know, losing control, basically allowing mass incursions of horrific beasts, or just literally exploding. And things start to unravel a bit. Not least because navigators are, in a very specific way, psychers. The people who facilitate interstellar communication, called astropaths, are also psychers. And these people start to be distrusted, purged, which kind of causes civilization to fall apart a little bit. It is implied that the places that purged their psychers more survived this time generally a bit better, which is not a good advert for, you know, the village mob working in this instance. But it's not the only thing that goes wrong around this time. We also have the Men of Iron, our long-term, wonderful servants. As a collective, decide that humanity bad, humanity need to be stopped, humanity need to be killed. And there is a massive galactic war between us and the robots and the AI, and it trashes pretty much everything. You know, our shiniest cities are thrown down, our infrastructure is trashed, but eventually the AIs are defeated, or, you know, eliminated enough to a point where there's like very few of them in hiding, but humanity is crippled because of this. So you've got the uncontrolled psychic manifestations, massive civil war, one of our major tools stolen from us. We are in a bad shape. Places are getting isolated, infrastructure is falling apart. This is bad news for civilization. You know, this is bad news on the scale of a country, never mind a galactic civilization. Remember when we were expanding and I said we went and we kind of trod all over a lot of the aliens that were out there? Yeah, they're not happy. They come down and take advantage of humanity in its weakened state, and so we get taken as slaves, straight up purged, used as servants, as gladiators, as a food source, as playthings by various alien races. And finally, at this point, you get that the immaterium, the warp, this is of course connected to the large uptick in human psychic potential. The warp stops being quite as calm and easy as it had been. And it decides that it's going to... Well, it doesn't decide, it starts. What was once a relatively placid sea with predictable currents, a nice little sort of Mediterranean sea, becomes a tempestuous ocean. So the alternate universe that we're used to going to hyperspace through stops being like the Atlantic, it stops being like the Mediterranean. It's not Genoa to Sardinia anymore. It becomes much more like the North Atlantic. It's storms, ships are getting lost, communication is broken. So you have a human civilization which is ripped into a million pieces, with most of its infrastructure broken, and any nearby aliens that we have annoyed in the past coming down and getting their own back. This is why the Golden Age of technology becomes the Dark Age of technology, because so much of this is lost. And this becomes what is known as the Age of Strife, or Old Night. So here I've got an image of some generalised sort of civil unrest going on. You can see our giant, beautiful cities are on fire and just become these wasted husks sitting there. You have our beautiful global ecumenopolises, these wonderful light cities just becoming like monoliths in deserts. So that's the situation across the galaxy. Back home on Earth, everything kind of devolves into isolated states. You know, it's the rule of the strong, whoever's got the best resources, and you know, sometimes you will get people who have, you know, are using psychic powers and communing with the influence of the Immaterium, can come up and make themselves into warlords. One of them's called the Kalgan of Arsh. In the Age of Strife is one of the big ones whose name comes up. Basically, it had armies of, you know, demon haunted men going on. A lot of the stuff in the old lore talks of this time being battles between techno-barbarian warlords, which is definitely a heavy metal album I'd like to hear. And so you have these huge sort of genetically enhanced, you know, steroided up, you know, guys with, you know, bionic weapons attached to them, just hundreds of thousands of them charging at each other over the dried former seabeds. And that's what Earth is for 5,000 or 10,000 years. Everything is collapsed, everything is rotten. And then, in about 200 or 300 years before the year 30,000, one guy stands up and decides he's going to unify Earth. But he's a bit of a special guy. This is the Emperor, the guy who will go on to be known as the Emperor of Mankind, the God Emperor. But at this point, he's just another warlord amongst a planet full of warlords, just with some slightly more grandiose plans. He's the captain of the Thunder Warriors, the Lord of Lightning. And that's about all we're going to have for this video. That's taking you through humanity's great rise and fall. The next two videos aren't so much going to be chronological. I'm going to have one that details more about what the warp and the powers there actually are. It's an introduction to the force known as Chaos. And then I'm going to go through the Emperor, what he's supposed to be. And then we will resume with the start of the Horus Heresy after that. So that's your next 3 videos there. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video and maybe learnt a thing, maybe a bit more interested in Warhammer 40,000. I'm always interested in what anyone has to say in the comments. Yeah, please keep watching, drop a like and subscribe, and thank you very much.